Hey guys, it's Will here, and today I'm going to teach you how to do these lava effect bases that I've got here on my Stormcast. And although it's a Stormcast model that I'll be demonstrating this on, because that's what I generally use these bases for, they could work on a variety of other models in both 40K and Age of Sigmar. For example, I think Salamanders would look really cool with these bases, but you could also use it for like corn demons and things like that. But anyway, without further ado, let's see what we do. So here's the model that we're going to be demonstrating this technique on. As you can see, it's a Stormcast Eternal Prosecutor Prime, and I've fully painted him, and I've painted the base in black. That's just to give it a nice solid base colour. And the first thing we're going to do is add some of these rocks. Now these are from like a GW basing kit that was around a few years ago, but to be honest, any rocks, as long as they're the right size, will do, and rocks should be pretty easy to get hold of. And so we're going to stick a few of these on. Now with this particular model, I've chosen him because he's got a lot of space on his base, so you can see what I'm doing. And there's a couple of rocks already sort of moulded onto there, but we're going to add a few more. And the glue I'm using for this is this Loctite Ultra Gel. You can get this from, Loctite Super Glue Power Flex it's called. Now it used to be called Ultra Gel, or there was one very like it called Ultra Gel, and that's really good for any sort of super gluing work because it's quite thick, you've got a lot of control, and it sticks really well. So I'm just going to get a nice big rock and glue that on the front there, and you can kind of pick and choose where you want to put these. And I'm going to put a couple of smaller ones over on this side. And this is just to give it some more interest. You don't necessarily have to do this on all of them, but yeah, a nice little pile of rocks will just help to make the base look a bit more interesting, basically, yeah. So there we go. Now I'm going to leave this glue to dry, and then we're going to come back and add some sand. So once the super glue is dry, so the rocks are firmly in place, we want to start adding some texture to the base, and there's two things we need for this. The first is PVA glue, just cheap as chips PVA from the supermarket, nothing fancy. And then I've got aquarium gravel here. I mean, really you can use any sort of gravel. I just found this one was particularly good value. I mean, I bought this pot for about £3.50 back when 5th edition was out, 5th edition 40K. We're now playing 8th edition 40K and it's nowhere near half used yet, so yeah, got a bit of the glue on my table, and then I'm just going to paint this over the base, but I'm not going to paint it on all of it. I just want to paint it where I don't want there to be lava. So at this point you kind of need to think about the composition of the base where you do and don't want lava. So I'm going to have it coming out of here. There's like a crack in the rocks at the back and flowing forward from there, and then forking out around this this large rock in the centre here. So with that in mind, I'm just keeping an eye on where I want the lava flow. And you want to make this relatively random, you know, it shouldn't be flowing in nice straight lines, and it certainly shouldn't be consistent patterns across your army. And sometimes it's actually a bit tricky to make something random because we naturally create things in an ordered manner, but you've got to try and think random. Right. So that is that bit done, and then I just need to adjust my camera for the next bit. So I've just moved my gravel so I can reach it a bit better, and normally I would dip the model in this, but the width of the wings on this guy means that I'm not actually going to dip it in the gravel, I'm going to have to sprinkle it on, so it's a little bit messier, but that's fine. So we're just sprinkling the gravel onto all the areas that you've glued, and don't worry about being too neat at this stage, because the gravel's obviously only going to stick where there's glue. So anywhere where there isn't glue, it's going to brush off, and this, as you can see, is making a bit of a mess, but that's fine, we can clear that up later. So the gravel's sticking nicely to all of those parts. And once it's all covered, you then want to take your model and hold him over the pot and then just tip. So all the excess gravel comes off, give it a bit of a shake, and you can see that the pattern is starting to form, where we've got gravel where we don't want lava and black base where we do. Now there's a couple of places where it's gone over where I'd like it. I've probably used a little bit too much glue. Then you just take your brush and scoop the gravel off before the glue dries. Incidentally, this is what I would term a junk brush. It's a really old paintbrush. I think it used to be a medium layer, but it's certainly seen better days and is now really only useful for this. Don't use your nice new fancy brushes for this. Use your cheap and nasty or your old and past their best brushes. So you just want to get all the gravel out of places where there shouldn't be gravel. And yep, that looks good. Now the next thing to do is leave this to dry, and that's going to take a while. I mean, I frequently do this last thing before I finish painting for the day and pick up the next step the next day, but you know, 3 or 4 hours should be enough to make sure this is set. Once that's all set, we're going to paint everything on the base black again, so all of the sand and the rocks. I'm going to use Abaddon black for this, and you want to add more water to this than you normally would, because if you try and paint over this sand in Abaddon black how you would normally use it for painting a model, it will not sort of cover very well. It'll sort of you just get through it too quickly, like you use up the paint on the brush too quickly without really covering much of the base. So instead we water it down so it covers a wider area, but also once it's dry it will actually help to seal the gravel in, because although it's nicely stuck on there, it will flake off with time. But if you once you've painted over it with 2 thin layers of this, then it will actually start to hold it in place. And we'll do the rocks as well, get them all black, because want them to appear to be made of the same type of material as the rest of the base. So like I said, it's going to take 2 thin coats to do this, so I'll come back once that's all done and dry. Once that's totally dry, it's time to highlight the base, and for this I'm going to use 3 separate layers of dry brushing, getting progressively lighter. So we're starting off with Eshin Grey, which I've already got prepared on my bit of tissue here. Then we've got Dawnstone, which is a bit of a lighter grey, and then a very light highlight in Administratum Grey. So like I said, I've already got the Eshin Grey on here. So this is quite a heavy dry brush. It's almost like an overbrush to leave just the darkest recesses in the base colour, in the black. Then we're going to give it a lighter highlight in the Dawnstone, and as you can see, this is starting to make the texture of the grit really stand out. And then finally just a very light dry brush in Administratum Grey, just to catch the most raised parts and finish off the nice textured effect on here. So as you can see, that's given the rocks and the gravel a nice textured appearance, as you would expect for sort of a barren, fire-blasted wasteland. Now we're going to go with the actual lava. So to start off we want corn red, and you want to paint this in, oh, knock my model over, paint this in all of the bits that are not rock, so all of these bits where we want the lava flow. And you want to be quite careful at this stage not to get it on anywhere that you've already painted, because it's going to be a bit of a pain to try and neaten up from red back to grey. So you're probably going to want 2 thin coats of this. Make sure you cover the black nicely, and this coat it is important that you get really good coverage, whereas on the next couple of coats we do, you actually actively don't want good coverage. But yeah, 2 coats of this, and then once that's dry I'll show you what we're going to do next. So with the corn red nicely dry, we want to start building up the various red, orange and yellow colours that are going to give us the nice lava effect. So I've got 4 colours here: Mephiston Red, Evil Sun Scarlet, Blazing Orange, which is actually one of the old colours, but I think the modern equivalent is something like Troll Slayer Orange. It was a mid-orange tone, and then Uriel Yellow. And I've already got the Mephiston Red on my palette, so what I'm doing here is just painting a layer of this on, and you actually want to keep it a bit thin so you can almost see the previous colour through it. And you also want to avoid going too close to the edge. You want to actually leave a little bit of the previous colour showing through. So to do this, you just need to make sure you've not got too much, you've got enough water in your paint that it's going to give this slightly transparent look, while still obviously getting the colour down. And as you can see, we're just staying away from the edges, leaving a bit of corn red showing. Once that's dry, we're going for our next layer using the same technique, and this is going to be Evil Sun Scarlet. And once again, you just want to make sure the the paint's got plenty of water in it, so that it gives nice smooth coverage, but showing a little bit of the previous colour through. And with every increasing step, you want to apply a little bit less, so you can see the edge of the colour underneath. And with this technique, it's quite useful if you can keep all the brush strokes going in the same general direction. It just helps to create more of a feeling of flow in the lava rather than it just being something that's static. And then we're going to do the same technique again with the orange. And then the final colour is going to be Uriel Yellow. So unlike the other colours where we've applied pretty much consistent line down the middle, with this we just want to do little flicks of it around the centre line, so sort of on the centre but also spreading out a little bit. And this is just going to represent slightly hotter hotspots in the lava, and by keeping these again all in one direction, it helps to accentuate the appearance of the flow of the lava rather than it simply being a static pool of lava. So that's now dry and our base is looking pretty good, but we want to make this lava actually look like it's liquid, and for this we're going to need Citadel Water Effect. Now this I believe has been discontinued, but there are plenty of other sort of brands of water effect liquids out there from a variety of hobby companies. I just happen to use the Games Workshop one because that's what I got when I first got this stuff. And a couple of things to note using this: it does have an incredibly long drying time. You want to leave 24 hours basically to make sure it's completely set, and once you've put it on and spread it out, don't be tempted to start adding more or poking it around before it's completely dry, because it can spoil the finished look. And if you want to get quite a thick layer of this, multiple thin coats. I say it a lot because it makes a difference, particularly with this. If you try and pour loads of it into an area to make a really deep water effect, it will end up just looking cloudy and not really giving the effect you want. So it's a little bit tricky to apply, but what you want to do is just tip a little bit of it into the area that you want it, and you can see it's come out way too thick there, which is why you only put a little bit on, and then get an old junk brush and spread it around. This stuff will stick to your brush, so you definitely don't want to use a good brush for this. Just an old junky brush like the one we used to apply glue earlier, and just cover the whole area that's going to be lava. This is part of the reason that we want to build up this nice texture around it, so it's going to hold it in place, because obviously it's not going to go over there. Doesn't matter if you go over the sides, we can paint over that later. And yeah, so right now that looks white, it looks messy, but give this 24 hours to dry and it should give us a really nice water effect. So I've applied 2 layers of water effect, one 24 hours after the other, and allowed them to both dry, and then to neaten up the base I've just finished off the edge in Abaddon Black. And as you can see, it's got this nice water effect. Now you have to turn it at an angle for the camera to catch it, but in the flesh this looks really nice and glossy. So that's the base complete, and I think although it takes a few steps, it's relatively straightforward to do and produces a really nice effect, particularly when you spread it out over a whole unit, or across a whole army. So bringing some of his buddies here, you can really see this is starting to give a nice theme to the army. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to leave you with some still pics of some of my other Stormcasts now, just to you know, show you some of the different compositions I've got on the bases. But anyway, thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.